How you doing there, black man? What's going on with you?
Everything is great, man.
Hey,
Everything is great.
how's the weather up
I
there?
just, it's a little warm. I was expecting it got cold the other day, and then it like warmed back up,
Yeah,
warmed
that's
right
how it
back
was for
up.
us last week. It was cold last week, and then it's been in the 80s all week. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Um, let me see what we talked about. So you are back. This is part what? Just you alone. This is part three. It's got yeah,
maybe. Yeah,
part
third time.
three. I'm
Third
gonna go back.
time's a charm.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna create a playlist, and
Okay.
I'm gonna have it by part one, part two, part three. But so today you want to talk about um the definitions of math. For those who may not know, this is brother Professor Akil Parker of All This Math. If you don't know, go to his channel, All This Math. Okay, uh, profound tutor, professor, the king of math. Yeah, I said it. Okay, all right. Show him the hoodie. Show him the hoodie. Let him know it's
Let me-
real.
let me-
Let him know it's real. That's right.
This is not a drill. This is not a drill. This is
That's
not a
right.
drill. Yeah.
Facts. Facts. So you want to start? Let's start with the definitions of math. Like you brought up. You wanted to get into that. So explain that to the people that may not understand where you're coming from when you say that.
Yeah. So I think that's very important because when you hear people talk about the irrelevance of math and the fact that they've never used math, or the business people and people and people that are seen that perceived to be successful and in these different walks of life, and they say you don't need to learn that and all of this, and it becomes very apparent to me that they really don't know what mathematics is. So I first want to, I want people to understand that math is more than just what a lot of us think it is. It's more than meets the eye. It's more than just the equations and the formulas and the plus signs and the minus signs and the numbers and the variables. Math is really a system of problem solving. It's a formulaic, methodical, system of problem solving. It is something that helps us develop our critical thinking ability. It's a system that helps us to develop analytical reasoning ability. And those three things right there, problem solving, critical thinking ability, and analytical reasoning ability, are something that every human being, every adult and child really should want to have access to. And mathematics is a subject, a discipline that can help us to develop all of that. And a lot of times we're using the people that say that they never use math, they're mistaken. We use math all the time. Like anytime you're finding an unknown value, or you recognize that there's a contradiction being somebody's lying to you.
Yeah.
Anytime you're able to recognize that, I mean, it's within the English language. A lot of the idioms we use and the popular culture slang terminology and vernacular we use, a lot of those are mathematical terms and mathematical vocabulary that we're applying, but we don't know that that's mathematical if you haven't really studied math on that deep of a level, you know.
Yeah.
Like I was listening to my son talk to my daughter earlier today, and my daughter was saying something, talking trash to him like she always do, like little sisters tend to do to older brothers sometimes,
Yeah.
especially when they miss them. And then she was saying something, and he was like, "But that's different, though." And as I was listening, it reminded me, like, that's different. That's a mathematical observation. Like when a person says, "What difference does it make?" In
Yeah.
mathematics, the term that we use to represent the answer to a subtraction problem is the difference, right?
Okay.
So imagine if you subtract like 5 minus 5, right?
All right.
The answer is 0, right? There's no
All right.
difference,
Right.
right? So when we talk about, what difference does it make, if there's no difference, that means that the value of the two objects or entities or options that are being compared, they have no difference. They got the same, that they can be represented with the same quantity. It's
Okay.
like if somebody say, well, I'm gonna walk up the street, we try to get to this spot. I'm gonna walk up the street 5 blocks and then walk over 2 blocks, right? And then somebody else say, well, nah, I'm gonna walk over 2 blocks right now and then walk up the street 5 blocks. And then somebody can say, well, what difference do it make? Now, because they're thinking, well, you walk in 7 blocks regardless,
Hmm.
because the difference between 7 blocks and 7 blocks is 0 blocks.
Right.
right? Either way,
Right.
y'all both walking 7 blocks. Now you could get more deep into it, and somebody could make the argument that, well, if I walk up this, like I prefer the scenery on this block, because
Right.
maybe it's some nice looking girl that that lives on that block that
Yeah.
you're a youngin, you see you want to go
Yeah.
past the girl house that you like, so
Yeah.
that's a difference, right?
Right.
But mathematically, objectively speaking, there's no real difference in the distance that you're traveling. So a lot of times we using mathematical terms in our everyday life and in our our common language, but we don't really realize it. And and it's also in combination with the way math has been marketed to us as something that is too difficult, something that is reserved for like just a certain group of people that have been born a certain way. Um, and it's not for black people, right? That's been marketed
Right.
to us. It's not for black people. It's for the white folks, because when you go into the math textbooks, oftentimes you'll learn about biographical information about the people that a lot of the formulas that we accept, right? Who they're named after.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys are Europeans, right? Or you go to a school and you see, okay, the Asian kids are doing well in math, they're excelling. The Indian kids are doing well, they're excelling. The Arab kids are doing well, they're excelling. We don't see a lot of examples of black people excelling in math, even though there are a lot of us that are excelling in math and have always excelled in math, but we oftentimes don't see those examples because those that control the media, those that control have the largest platforms, they're giving attention to other black people doing other things, you know. Um, so yeah, so I
Oh,
think go ahead.
hold on before you go any further. With that example you just gave about walking 7 blocks, um, would geometry? Let me. And I'm just going to ask this: would geometry play um, a part in it? If let's say um, we walking 7 blocks, but where we going is on the corner of one side, right? So I would say, you know, that with geometry played a part as far as like the angles, as far as like the distance. Say like, if I walk from my house, which is in between the middle of my block, but I'm walking let's say I'm walking east and then I'm cutting down to go north or north or whatever. But the spot that we trying to get to is on the opposite side, but it's on the corner. So technically you walking 7 blocks, but depending on where you are from the block that you leaving from, that takes an effect too. So wouldn't that would geometry play a part in that type of equation there too?
It can, because the
Okay.
geometry deals with like what the shape of the distance or the path traveled would be.
Okay.
And sometimes like people, we the shortest distance between any 2 points is a straight line, right?
Okay. Right.
So that deals with geometry because we're talking about
Okay.
points, we're talking about
Okay.
lines.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
line segments. We're talking about line segments because a line technically lines go on forever in both directions, but a line segment is from point to point, right?
Okay.
Um, but like instead of so dig this right, so instead of going up, north and then going, let's say, instead of going north and then going east, if you could go diagonal
Yeah.
directly to the end point, if you could cut through
Cut
like
through
an
the
alley or
yards.
something, you
Yeah.
cut through some yards, then you're thinking geometrically because you're thinking
Right.
about right triangles. You're
Right.
thinking about a right triangle, but we're doing it. It's almost like it's instinctive because we just we're thinking a lot of us are thinking critically, but we don't know that that's math. We don't know that
Facts.
that's geometry. We
Facts.
don't know that that's algebra, right?
Yeah.
Because we've been conditioned to believe that one thing don't got nothing to do with the other. We'd be like, nah, that's just something we do. No,
Yeah.
well, what it is that you do is geometry. You using geometry, you using algebra, right?
Right.
But again, it's so much conditioning around, you know, how to keep us away from math. Like keep them away from math. Just like, I don't know, we might have talked about this before, but it's like the way math is kind of presented to us. It's the same way that Africa has been presented to us as something that we should not want to partake in, something that we should not want to, embrace, something that a place we should not want to go to, we should not want to feel like we're a part of. And in the meantime, everybody else is going there. Everybody
Right.
else is going there getting extracting the resources, setting up shop, stealing, like they've always been doing.
Yeah.
While we've been told, nah, stay away from that. It's nothing over there. It's just we was told that it was African booty scratches over there, so you don't want to go there,
Yeah.
right? We
I
was we
remember
was
that.
taught that, and like math, they do the same thing with math. Like stay away from math. You don't need to know all that. It's not gonna help you in life. It's too hard. Why I
Yeah.
need to know this. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
um, and now it's even more deep because now with the the advent of a lot more technology. You can go on your phone. You can ask Siri to answer a lot of questions. You can ask Alexa if you have a smart household or
Yeah.
whatever with
They
that
got that thing,
technology.
and they got that thing now. I think it's with Apple, where like if you
Yeah,
got that pen and you write out the equation, it automatically solves it for you.
yeah. And on the iPhones too, on iOS 18, when you just like use the Notes app and just write an equation or write a question, it'll answer it for you.
Wow.
But here's the
Just
thing.
making
Here's the
us
thing
dumber.
though. Like,
Just making
yeah,
us dumber.
exactly. That's what people don't understand. Like, everything has when we think about economics, everything has an opportunity cost. Everything comes at a price. It's like, so
Facts.
even no matter how convenient something is for you or us, um, how much easier it makes life, there's an opportunity cost. Like, for a person, like let's take in like an example of that. Like a person that has to walk to the bus stop every day to go to work. So they might end up walking a mile a day, just to get to public transportation. And, while they're on public transportation, let's say they're a reader. So they might have a 45-minute commute. So they get
Yeah.
45 minutes. Well, actually, 45 plus 45, that's 80 plus 10, that's an hour and a half of reading in. So you get 90 minutes of reading in, and then you get 2 miles of walking in every day you
Right.
go to work. But then let's say you saving money up and you get a car. Because it's like, okay, well, it gets cold sometimes, so maybe you don't want to walk when it's cold out. Or maybe it's raining sometimes, you don't want to walk in the rain and in the elements, and you get a car. But now you got the car, now your exercise is gone. You can't get that 2 miles. You're not getting that 2 miles in no more. And
Yeah.
then
I
you
ain't
don't get
think
the
about it
time,
like that.
and then an hour and a half, you can't read that hour and a half a day you was reading on. Now, some people say, well, it's audiobooks though. True, you can listen to audiobooks, but listening to an audiobook is not the same as like sitting with a book and engaging the text and really reading word for
Yeah.
word, line for line, and even like sitting there being able to take notes and like
Right.
highlight, underline. And then when ideas pop up in your head in response to what the author is saying, being able to write in the margins like what your thoughts are.
Right.
Like you can't do that with
That's
an
true.
audiobook. It's not
That's
the
true.
same thing. Um so there's a cost involved even with having more convenience,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of times the things that require more effort from us, it forces us to learn skills and develop skills. So
Okay.
a lot of times, like with math, like people like celebrate this idea that well, we don't need to know this because the computer will do this. But what I say is like I think it exposes the fact that it's really an emotional issue that people have with mathematics, because if you employ that logic that you don't need to learn math because you can ask Google or you can ask Siri, then where does it end? That's a slippery slope, because for that matter,
That's true.
why do you need to learn anything?
That's true.
Because you can ask Google for anything. So then, but people wouldn't necessarily say that. Like they wouldn't say, "Well, I don't need to know how to cook." Well, maybe some people say this, but there are a lot of people that wouldn't say, "I don't need to learn how to cook because there's DoorDash and Uber Eats, or I can just go to get carry out 365 days a year." I don't think nobody
Yeah.
would really say that, but you could by that logic. Then it's like, well, why learn to do anything? But math is put in that category, and people say, "Well, I don't need to learn this. I don't need to learn that because the computer could do that for you." I think we got to ask the question, like, why do you want the computer to do that for you? Like, why? Do
Lazy.
and the thing is, like, we gotta understand what an option really is. Like, an option, it's not an option when it's your only choice. An
Yeah.
option is when you have several different routes you could take. But if I don't know how to do a mathematical calculation and I have to go to Google and I have to ask Google what it is, that's not really an option. That's me being desperate. I'm
Okay.
desperate. My back is against the wall. So the computer has to do it. And if the computer has to do it, I'm at the mercy of the computer. And I think about Melly Mel from back in the day, '84 on Beat Street Breakdown of the
Hmm.
Beat Street soundtrack. And he said that he had that line. He said, don't never let no computer run your life. And this is what we do. We let computers
Look
run
where
our
we
lives,
are.
and we're proud of it
Look where
because
we are.
we've been duped into thinking that really represents a higher standard of living. I mean, I understand convenience. I mean, I understand convenience, and but I think, like I said, I think it should be an option, and I think for a lot of us, it's not an option. It's
Or
our
at least in
the only route.
at least in moderation, right? You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like you test your brain muscles, man. Test your brain muscles more than you take a break from doing it. You know what I'm saying? Because when it's time to test your brain muscles, you don't want to be stressed out and over the simplest things because you're so used to, like I said, technology. Like you said, technology catering to you, dumbing you down. For the most part, that's what technology has done, is dumb us down. Other than having a quicker access to information, but at the same time, it made us not want to look for things. It made us not like I tell me how many. I'm willing to guess. If anybody's watching this video, when's the last time you went to the library for information? You know what I'm saying? When is the last time you went to the library? You went to the librarian and you asked them what a specific book was, and they tell you where it's at. You go get it. You go. You look through it. You go through the newspaper articles, the old newspaper clippings. Like when's the
yeah.
last time you done that? You know what I mean? So I get
That
what you're
reminds
saying.
me.
Go
That
ahead.
reminds me of another example of my point. You bringing up the library. I remember. I think I was in fourth grade, and they taught us the Dewey Decimal System, and they taught us how to use the card catalogs. This was back in the day when like schools had actual active libraries. Had school librarians and all that. Um, that's on the decline. These days, right?
Yeah.
Um, but but honestly, when I was, I was a young brother. I would go to the library. I would need a book or something. Like I would be lazy. I would just straight go to the library. And once I found out, I said, "Oh, so I know how to use the Dewey Decimal System. I know how to use the card catalog because that was back in the day when we had the they had the little drawers with you had to pull the drawers out and look for the book, look for
Oh yeah, the little
the little
card.
piece of
Yeah.
the index card with the
Yeah.
information about the book, and then they would tell you where to go to get it, right? But I was like, man, I ain't trying to do all that. So like one day I asked the librarian was like, oh sure, I'll go get that for you. So I'm like, wait a minute, so they just gonna get the book for you anyway? But again, it was an option because I
Yeah.
knew the Dewey Decimal System. I knew how to use the card catalogs, but I decided to be lazy and just like, all right, well, I'm gonna just ask her because she's sitting there and she's gonna do it anyway, and that's a job, I guess, right? But it's
Yeah.
not like I ain't had no choice. It's not like what I'm saying. Like if the librarian wasn't there, or the librarian's like, nah, I'm busy right now. I'm not gonna sit. I was gonna have to, and I would have had to wait like 45 minutes or 30 minutes or so. I'm not gonna sit there and wait 30 minutes. Nah, I know how to do this. I'm gonna go do it, right?
Right.
But so many people, when it comes to mathematics, it's like, well, no, I don't know how to do the math at all. So the computer has to do it for me. They got to do it for me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and you just think about like the effects of that. Like you got like a calculator is a type of computer. You got children picking up a calculator to do 4 times 2, and it's like, bro, 4 times 2? No, you need to have that memorized. Like you need to have that memorized. Like that is unacceptable. And we got to start saying that. Like, and the people, not a lot of people, but some people, I mean, I appreciate the conversation, but like I went viral on a couple of clips from talking about multiplication facts and
Word.
pushing that people need to memorize multiplication facts. And
Yeah.
some people push back on it. They say, no, because you don't need to memorize that because, you know, again, technology will do it for you. And I'm like, yeah, but like why are you taking out a calculator to do 4 times 2? Why are you taking out a calculator to do 7 times 5? You should
I, t-
know that. Some things you
I,
should just know.
I tell you what. I tell you what. uh, I would probably say 95% of all cashiers will pull their hair out if their systems went down and they had to use their own head, their own mind to figure out the change. Somebody give them $15.23, and they hand them a $20 bill for something that costs $15.23. I've been there. I've been shook because I used to work at Walmart, and they had me working the register, and just so happened the power goes out. It was, you got to keep going, and I was shook. 6, 7 people in my line. I said, so you got to stop depending on that. You got to stop depending on it. And now I understand why the teachers were so hard on us about not using calculators. You got to know it for yourself. You got to know it for yourself. Because like I said,
Yeah,
what if your phone dies? Then what? What's your
right.
answer then? You know?
And you got to know when to use the calculator because there's a time and a place,
Facts.
right? So you got to have enough discernment yourself to know, okay, like when should I use this? Because sometimes it is about efficiency. Because we doing like 4,987 times 10,642.
Right, right,
I personally don't know how to do that mentally. I could figure it out. It would take me a while, but in terms of efficiency, and if I'm not going to write it out manually, I think that's a good time to use the calculator, pull the
right,
calculator out. But
right.
4 times 3, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Four times, no. We're not multiplying single digit numbers with a calculator. Like, nah, we're not doing that.
Right.
That's
I
that's
got
that's
I
unacceptable.
got you.
That's just unacceptable. Some
All right,
stuff
so
you gotta do for self.
with that being said then, um how should people approach math? What is the approach to math?
It's gotta be as a system of problem solving. Well, not only a system of problem solving, but as a language, because math is a language in itself. And that's another thing that gets a lot of people caught up. Like math has a lot of symbols. Like if you look at the background on this screen right now, like all of these are symbols. Like this is the language of math, and you got to know what the symbols mean. You got to know what they mean in different contexts, because in certain situations, this is part of the reason why some people argue about order of operations problems that people post on Facebook. People either don't know or they don't want to accept the fact that a parentheses can mean different things in different situations. Sometimes
Huh.
a set of parentheses is just a grouping symbol to indicate to you that you need to simplify this expression that's written inside of these parentheses first before you do anything else, right?
Right.
Sometimes a parentheses just means that, okay, well, if there's a number next to the parentheses on the outside of it, that just indicates multiplication because there's no plus sign, minus sign, division sign, or even a written multiplication sign. That still indicates multiplication.
Okay.
But depending on the situation, but because people get caught up in PEMDAS, which I don't really like, because
What's that?
PEMDAS is the mnemonic device that a lot of us learned, myself included, years ago, which stands for parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. But
Okay.
again, there's a lot of conceptual or number sense within that PEMDAS doesn't really expose. So the M being before the D, multiplication coming before division is what people assume all the time, and
Mhm.
that's not true. It's actually multiplication or division depending on what's written first.
Okay.
So but that gets people caught up, and then people be saying stuff like this must be that new math, and it's like, nah, bro, it's not new. Like the order of operations has never changed. But here's the thing though, because people will be like, yeah, but I did good at math, and I got A's in math, and I was good. But the thing about it is, if you never got an example of a problem, or your teacher never gave you an example where there was division before multiplication, that situation won't present may never have been presented to you.
It wasn't
Because
presented to me because I was always told it was multiplication. Well,
so if
with the
you see
parentheses.
if within the problem, if multiplication, reading it from left to right, if multiplication always comes before the division in terms of how the problem is originally written, then it's
Yeah.
not going to be an issue, because you just fought,
Yeah.
because then you are doing multiple. You're supposed to do multiplication before division.
Yeah.
Everything goes haywire if you don't know that detail, which says that it's multiplication or division, depending on what comes first. It goes haywire when the division is written first, and now that because that's those problems on social media. They
Gotcha.
purposely set them up with the division before the multiplication to see if people know how to handle that nuance, and
Gotcha.
a lot of people don't. But you could have
Mhm.
been in math classes where the teacher never gave an example like that. So
Yeah, I
you going
never got
along
that.
all hunky dory, you thinking like, oh, I know how to do this, but then, you didn't get the, more complex, type of problems, and where you had to encounter that. So I think that's why a lot of people, and they go hard, man. They be going to war, man. Like,
Let me, let me ask you a question because I think it's something a lot of people don't think about too. because I said this when I was younger, growing up, when I was in high school, middle school too. Because I fell out of I loved math in elementary school. Um, I, for me, and when it started getting to fractions,
Hmm.
that's when I lost. I lost desire for it. Um, but the going theme used to be in class amongst other students or whatever is that, man, why are we learning this? We never going to use this. This is a waste of time. So for those who may be watching, young, uh, young or older, give me like a few jobs that people may not think may not have known where math is important for when it comes to like that job. Like for like so like you talking to the high school kid that may be saying, man, what am I learning this math for? But when they get to college, it may be a job that they may want where you're gonna be taking a lot of classes in math. So you better start like hunkering down now in high school before you get to college. You know what I'm saying? And you're trying to get this degree for this job. Like what are some jobs that jump out to you where math is like the the focus?
Well, anything that's STEM related, anything that's considered a STEM discipline, computer science, medicine. If you want to be a doctor, I mean, a lot of people don't want to be doctors. We do need more black doctors, though. Some
Yeah,
people shy away because of the cost, because of the math classes required, because of the science classes required, um, the length of time in school. But even if a person wants to be a registered nurse, which requires less schooling, but it's still like a lot of mathematics involved in that training. Engineering, any type of engineering. I mean, even construction, like construction jobs, like you got to understand fractions, contracting. You got to understand geometry, to a certain extent, like
yeah,
angles. A lot of things you got to understand. But I, fractions are something that I think, they have to be understood conceptually. Like we need to know like what a fraction really is and what it represents.
all right,
But also to your other point, what people do say, like you said, is that students start asking that question, like why I got to learn this and when are we going to use this. So those two questions are usually only asked when somebody doesn't really understand how to do the work. If the work is easy, like I never hear people ask that question when it's easy. So it's really just like it's a trauma response.
yep,
It's a response to difficulty, right?
right,
um but it's a lot of things like that. I mean, again, like like you would, I mean, it's a lot of, I don't know, there are a lot of situations, where like you might not necessarily use a skill you have, but it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. But if
yeah,
I could zoom out some and say, like we talked about geometry a little bit earlier,
yeah,
but the thing about geometry is that, again, even with geometry, it's more than meets the eye, because one of the sub disciplines within geometry is logic. A lot of
mm,
school districts, though, have removed the logic parts of the curriculum from geometry. They've
mm,
intentionally done this. Now, I could speculate as to why they did this, because if you're not teaching people logic, then they're going to be less logical and they're much more easier to control. I
there
could
you go.
speculate and say that. Somebody might accuse me of being a conspiracy theorist, but hey, whatever. But but all I know is I know is a lot of school districts have taken logic out of geometry, and because the geometry is really about learning how to be logical, learning how to prove arguments, and that's something that you need to do just in all walks of life. If you want to be an attorney, you want to make a
mm,
claim, make an argument, and use facts to substantiate your claim, and show why your position has merit and why it has validity. You can learn that in geometry. Like, but again, we oftentimes we get caught up on the surface level, right? We don't look deeper, right? In geometry, we see the shapes and we see the angles and we see like the formulas, and we like, when am I going to use this? I don't want to be an interior designer. I don't want to be an architect. When am I going to use this? It's like, bro, like the same way that you got to prove, if I give you a parallelogram or a trapezoid and I give you the measurements of two of the angles, and I tell you, prove to me that the other two angles got to be this, right?
right,
um the same thought process you got to go through. using the formulas, using what you know about the rules and the relationships and the theories about trapezoids or parallelograms or whatever. It's the same way as if somebody is you like, yo, somebody stole my money out my room, and I know it was only three people in this house, and I know at this point in time the money was there, and I know at this point in time the money was gone. So I got to go through a deductive reasoning process, and I can prove that this person took it.
Mm,
It's the same exact thought process, the same exact approach,
that's mad for
the
your
same
ass.
exact approach. It's
Yeah.
it's using logic, and a lot of times, and I do think that that's why we have a lot of issues because we don't know how to do that a lot of times, and that's why somebody got to take the gun out all the time, and somebody got to start fighting because we end up reacting emotionally
Right.
instead of being able to have a systematic way to solve a problem and really come to a conclusion, right?
So
So we
so
just
are
get
you saying
frustrated and get angry.
so okay, so are you making a link between math and what do you say? Um emotions as far as dealing with situations that you may face? Like because for you to be as deep into math as you are, you present logic. You present, I'm gonna think about this first. You know
Hmm.
what? I'm gonna think about I'm gonna think about this before I put hands on you.
Hmm.
I'm gonna see what the what the logic in this is. Do you make can you make a direct correlation between behavioral problems and math?
I definitely would. I definitely
Okay.
would because what ends up happening is, with the ability to utilize logic in different situations, then again you have options. So it's like you get to like see the situation for what it is. But and when you're unable to do that, unable to see the situation for what it is, that leads to a type of frustration, and an anger. It's almost like a similar thing when a person lacks vocabulary. Because when you lack vocabulary in the language that you speak,
Yeah,
it can become frustrating because you don't know how to express yourself. You don't know you don't know how to say what you're trying to say. That could be a very frustrating thing,
that makes sense.
right? So lacking logic and lacking the ability to understand the circumstances that you're existing in that moment, and then you feel like somebody, oh, this person took something from me,
Yeah.
but maybe they didn't take something from you. You don't really know. You haven't thought it through. You just
Right.
know what it seems like, right? But
Right.
you haven't been able to enlist logic to try to see what actually happened, and that could be a frustrating thing. It can make you angry,
And that plays
and
a part
then
in changing your current conditions with being able to change your current conditions logically with math. Learning how
right,
math leads to learning how to change your current conditions logically.
definitely because you're
I can
you're constantly doing math problems. You're constantly practicing critical thinking, and
got you.
you're practicing analysis. You're practicing analytical reasoning. Because the same way you approach different math problems is, it's a step by step process. First, you got to assess the problem, think about, okay, what is my goal? What am I being asked to do in this problem? You know, how do I get to the answer?
Yeah.
And then it might be four or five different ways that you do this type of problem, but you got to figure out, okay, which one of those ways should I use right now in
Yeah.
this particular problem?
Okay.
So there's that too. So yeah, I definitely. But now it doesn't necessarily mean I don't want to romanticize. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you're well versed in math and very highly proficient in math, you're always going to make the right choice. But I do because there's still the human factor. But
Right.
I do think that at least we're going to know, or you're going to do some type of cost benefit analysis, and it's like and even if you reason that okay, this is the better option, I should
There
chill.
you go.
It's the
There you
better
go.
option.
Yeah.
But you might still punch him in his mouth. But at
Yeah.
least you knew better. You did know better, as opposed
Yeah.
to again, because what did we talk about earlier? It's about options. It's about
Right.
having options,
Right.
right? In that situation, you know what your options are, and also hopefully you know what the consequences are. You've also considered the consequences. That's another thing that math does. It takes us into consequential thinking. Every time we do a math word problem in a math class, that's an exercise in consequential thinking. It's about the consequences, because what happens in a word problem is you're given some information about a scenario or a situation, and then you're asked to tell, okay, well, what would happen if we increase the amount of money spent on this, or we increase or decrease the amount of time it takes to do this thing, or if
Yeah.
we drive in the car for this long, let's say we increase the number of people in the car, how's that going to affect the weight of the car, which is how's it going to affect the gas mileage, or the whatever, or the
Right.
maximum speed we can attain. So it's all about thinking about the consequences of something. So I think a lot of people, we're not conditioned to really even consider consequences. We're so like caught up in, like, we have so much experience with just living in the moment, and we don't
Yeah.
have enough practice with just thinking about consequences. Even if you like say, well, I know the consequences, but I'm still gonna do the thing that's gonna lead to the negative consequence anyway. But at least I thought about it.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then there's no real reason to complain about the punishment that you receive if you know the consequences. Like, okay, I know this is gonna happen, so it's
Okay.
cool, whatever,
All right.
you
Let
know.
let me ask you a question. Okay, let me ask you another question. Um, you got a lot of how can I say, like you have a lot of theories that were named after certain people that supposedly came up with them, right? Um, what, who, or what is your favorite equation, your formula? What is your favorite formula? And if you know who created that formula, or who that formula was coined after?
My favorite formula, man,
Yeah.
that's a good question. I'm glad you asked me that question, because I don't think I have a favorite formula off the top of my head, but I should though. Um, I might say the quadratic formula.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of the quadratic formula.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
for those who may not know what that is, like layman's terms.
Layman's terms. So the quadratic formula is a formula that we use to solve for x, or an unknown value, in a situation where we got an expression that represents something that happens, right? Or is it a model of something that happens, like
Okay.
shooting a basketball, throwing a football, right?
Okay.
We can model um how far, or wait a minute, yeah, how long the ball will be in the air if you throw a football pass, how long the ball will be in the air, um any projectile, a rocket taking off into the air, a bullet being shot, anything. Like, these are just some of the examples. There's many examples, but you model, it's called the quadratic formula because one of your variables is going to have an exponent of 2. So it's going to be something with x squared in it, right?
Okay.
It's not going to be
Gotcha.
an x to the third or x to the fourth power. The biggest exponent is going to be a 2.
Okay.
So then you got the model of the situation, because a model is just, it's a model. It's a way to explain a phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
So what the quadratic formula does is it enables us to figure out the value of x, right, in a given situation. So it
Ah.
enables us to figure out the unknown, right?
Ah.
Um,
Malcolm X.
just just a lot of, yeah. Just a lot of, and actually the quadratic formula was derived from another method, a longer method called completing the square. And by square we mean the a perfect trinomial square,
Okay.
which is basically three terms. Um, the variable with the biggest exponent is a 2, so you got an x squared term. The last term is a perfect square, like 16 is a perfect square because 4 times 4 is 16. 100 is a
Yeah.
perfect square because 10 times 10 is 100. Um, the coefficient is just a number that's attached to the variable. So like 9x, 9 would be the coefficient. The coefficient of the lead term, the x squared term, is also a perfect square,
Yeah.
right? And the square root of the last term and the first term multiplied together, and then I think you double by 2. I should know this. Yeah, double 2 would be the middle term. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
that's what it is, but I
Yeah.
might be confusing it with another math principle. But
Okay.
yeah, but the quadratic formula comes out of that. So a lot of times people think, well, somebody just kind of sat back and made something up, but a lot of times stuff is derived. It's kind of like, something like, a lot of the things that we use, we figure it out because if you do a thing, like if you work at a job and you do a thing a certain way every single day, and then you just naturally realize, like, wait a minute, I've been doing every day when I do this, this is the outcome. But what if I tried to do it this way? I might be able to do it quicker
Yeah.
if I do it this way instead. And then you just, from that moment on, you're like, okay, from now on, I do it like this.
Yeah.
And then you just, so now you've come up with a quicker way, a more efficient way to do something. You didn't set out to do that. It's just
Right.
based on observation and you doing the work on a
Yeah.
daily basis. So a lot of math formulas, they come about in the same exact way. Somebody was
Facts.
using another method and then they realized, like, okay, every time I multiply by 3, or every time I multiply by an odd number, or every time I divide by an even number, so it
Yeah.
always ends up being like this. So then they say, well, damn, what would happen if I put this number in there, or I did this, and then next thing you know, it's like, oh, okay, I could just, this is an actual formula in itself, and then, that's what it, like the quadratic formula comes from, you
Okay.
know.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but I
Okay.
need to think about that. I need to think about like what my actual like favorite formula is. Yeah,
I
because
got
I
one more
should
for
have
you.
one.
I got one more for you. I got one more question for
Uh,
you. I've been because I was thinking about this before. It took me a little while to come up with these though, but it makes sense because I love doing what I do as far as podcasting. It introduced me to how could I say graphics, right?
mhm.
It helped me branch off into finding another hobby and love in graphics. What has or has math helped you or led you, introduced you into something else that became a hobby of yours or that passion or love of yours because of
That's a good.
math?
That's a good question. I guess being able to help other people understand it, like doing tutoring. Well, that's not really a hobby. That's a business.
Yeah.
Um, but I
Well, I
think,
mean, it can still be a business. You making money off of a hobby, but
yeah, yeah. But one
if you
one of the things
enjoy doing it,
yeah, definitely, I definitely enjoy doing it.
yeah,
I think part of it is like it's therapeutic for me because in my kindergarten through 12th grade experience, for the most part, I was a strong math student. But a lot of people don't know, or they wouldn't realize, or wouldn't consider that I did have some rough patches. So, I know what it's like to sit in class and feel like, why we got to learn this shit? Like, like, like when am I going to use this? Right? But only said that because I didn't know it. I didn't know how to do it. If I knew,
yeah,
see, when I knew how to do it, when the math classes was easy and I was flowing and I had the teachers that would break it down, I never asked that question. But I mean, theoretically, you should still ask that question. Like when you get an A and you sitting there like, I don't really know when I'm gonna use this, but I'm getting an A in it, so I'm not gonna ask that question. But
yeah,
once you start failing, then you start asking that question, like, when am I gonna use this? Like, but it's like, but then the thing is, like, why you wasn't asking that question when you was getting an A? So
facts,
like, but I know how that. If I say that, I bring that up because I know how that feels.
yeah,
To not understand because what I was trying to do, which is what I think a lot of students are trying to do. They're trying to look for an out because it's like, well, if this is futile and useless anyway, then why should I be sitting here stressing about it?
yeah.
Stressing about
That was
something that I ain't
me.
going to use anyway.
That was me.
So yeah, like I know how that feels. So like it's almost like by learning it and well, teaching it. I taught it I taught a lot of these things that gave me trouble for years. But then with the tutoring, it was like a reinforcement. And then I'm
Okay.
developing personal relationships with the students that I'm tutoring, and it's almost like coaching because now I'm
Yeah.
like I get to be the person that I needed. Because I think when in the rough patches, all I needed was a tutor. I needed somebody to just break it down, like, bro, this is all it is, like, boom, boom, boom,
Or
and
somebody
then
that loved it. Somebody that loved math. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
yeah,
and look, no, I don't because I never want to take shots at teachers. Because like I said, they have a lot of responsibility. But at the same time, when it comes to, like I said, like me and you, when it came to us during those were the times where having that right teacher, that could pick up on that and like, be that cheerleader for you and get you back on your square, to build back up that confidence. Because like you said, whenever it was frustrating in the beginning and then you like, man, the hell with this. I ain't gonna never use this no way. But
Right.
you got to pass the class. So when you start getting it and you start learning it, you start beating your chest. You walk out,
Yep.
it's a different swag when you put your books in your book bag and you swinging around your back, and you walking out of class, you like, yeah, 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 you know what I'm saying, and then you
Yeah.
clowning with your partners like, yeah, 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 that ain't nothing, it's nothing, I've been through that, but
Yeah.
and it's a confidence builder, you know what I'm saying, and I feel for a lot of the kids that don't have that right teacher to be like, hey, 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 I understand how you feel, I've been there. But these are the things where it could affect you in life. Like this is what you're gonna need to
Right.
use, and I think that's what a lot of teachers should start with. Like I said, I wish, and I pray that something happens for you, brother, where like you on this tour, a speaking tour, where you're talking, where people are paying you to talk to a room full of high school, middle school, elementary school teachers, and tell them like, yo, this is math is so important to where it's like it should be an introductory conversation about math. Like lay the groundwork of like why math is important. Don't just teach them math and tell them that they need to learn this and learn it. Teach them, like, give them the bigger picture of like what
Right.
all math entails, what all is affected by math, so they can. It opens their eyes and it gives them a broader sense of thinking about math versus just either learning the past or I ain't gonna use this nowhere, no way. If you got that teacher to tell you, oh no, you gonna use it, it's gonna affect every facet of your life. Like it's gonna
Yeah.
affect your logic, it's gonna affect your problem solving, young man. Like simple
Yeah.
things. But they teachers not having that conversation. Kids sit down, okay, this is what we working on today, blah 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 blah. Nah, it's bigger than that, you know.
Yeah.
So
And that's
I hope
that's
and
a
pray for you, brother. Like where you're tutoring the teachers on their
yeah.
approach to math and how they introduce it to their students. You know what I'm saying? Because that's very important how things are introduced to the students from the jump. It sets the tone.
Definitely. Because that's something I had to learn. Because like early in my career, I was going, just the textbook. Okay, we're going straight into the problems.
Yeah,
But it's more effective if like you do what you're advocating for, which is to have a real conversation. Have a more general conversation, a more friendly conversation about like well, this is what this can be used for. And even better when you know your students and you know what their interests are, and you're able to tell them and show them like, okay, that thing that you're interested, whether it's sports, whether it's music, whether it's whatever hobby it might be, or or your neighborhood, that issue in your neighborhood, like we can use this equation to like actually figure out some the answers to some questions about that thing,
yeah,
and I can show you that.
right.
So that's really important. The other thing I want to say, you reminded me of something. I don't know if we talked about it before, but this concept of asymmetrical warfare.
Okay.
I think about that in terms of math too, or in terms of mathematical awareness. And because oftentimes, like I've heard a lot of parents say things like, my daughter or my son, they don't need to learn all that. They'll be all right. And one day I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about how, because I go to these. I'm a member of the National Association of Mathematicians, which is essentially an organization of HBCU professors. A lot of black
Mm,
folks that do a lot of black folks that do math.
okay.
Majority black folks. Teach at different universities, mainly HBCUs, but some HWCUs as well around the country,
Yeah.
and hanging around them, going to these conferences that they have. I'm hanging around like black people with like they're getting PhDs in this area of math, or this other area of math, and I'm having conversations with them. I'm like, well, what are you going to do with that? Oh, well, I plan to go work for this company or that company, and create models and optimization models to figure this out and figure that out, and
Yeah.
to forecast how many the amount of people that's going to do this and do that. And I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm like, so these companies that basically control our lives, whether they're corporations or the government, right, that control all these aspects of our lives, control our tastes, control our likes, control our desires, because they're constantly marketing things to us, right?
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
affects our diet, and what we like, what we dislike. They're hiring mathematicians
Hmm.
to develop formulas that will be able to enable them to do this more efficiently and more effectively. And these
Okay.
mathematicians have taken calculus 1, calculus 2, calculus 3, differential equations, linear algebra, commutative algebra, proofs, analysis courses. Um, why I think of asymmetrical warfare is because here it is, the people that essentially control our lives, right, are dictating most of our the aspects of most of our lives.
Right.
They have mathematicians on their payroll, right, that took a lot of higher level math, right, took math classes for years. Some math classes we may never even hear of, right? Most of us.
Right.
And then our lives are actually being affected and influenced by the decisions that these people that took all these math classes are making. And we're saying as parents, we don't care or we don't want our child to take that much math. So we're setting our children up in an
Failure.
asymmetrical warfare situation. And if
Yeah.
we do think about it, we should think about it as warfare because, you know, this government is not on our side. These corporations do not love us. They just want our
No.
money and want our resources. They want to extract resources and extract wealth from us. So it is a warfare situation. And what's happening is these corporations and these government entities got, B-2 bomber jets and whatnot, and tanks and all this, and bazookas and all that. And we giving our kids pocket knives by telling them, "Nah, you don't need to learn
Yeah.
how to work the AR-15." But they
Right.
got the AR-15s,
Right.
but you don't need to worry about the AR-15s. This is essentially what's happening. But a lot of us don't think about it like that, um, because we don't really even because again, a lot of us we don't know what mathematicians do or what they're capable of doing, and a lot of the work that they do. You know,
Yeah.
because a lot of this stuff, like people that study high level statistics, high level calculus, high level algebra, they're creating models and game theory. Game
Right.
theory, right? Game theory is a lot is used a lot in military science.
Okay. Dang, I didn't know
So
that.
that the military is using mathematicians to figure things out.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
um, and it gets deep. It gets deep. These are the things that motivate me to study like higher level math now. Like I'm trying to get like right now I'm on a quest to or a journey to get real strong in calculus 1, real strong in calculus 1, because like I took calculus 1 in college. I got a grade, but I didn't really know it because in college a
Yeah.
lot of times you don't really learn classes because it's a minimal amount of time. You just taking the class, you're trying to get the grade. You don't really have the time to really learn it. You have the
Right.
time that you have time to learn enough to get the grade on the test when the exams come out,
Yeah.
but you don't really learn it. You know, so
Yeah.
now I'm really like studying it. Really trying to really understand it, and I'm also like working with some students that I'm tutoring in calculus too, so that's helpful too.
Okay.
But I'm trying to like match up, my calculus ability with like my because algebra I'm real strong, geometry I'm real strong, trigonometry, pre-calculus I'm real strong in those areas. But I'm trying to get there because calculus is the gateway to the higher level math, right?
I didn't know that. Okay.
Um, yeah, it's to the higher level math, and that's the issue right there too because. So this ties into a lot of the something I want to say about a lot of the complaints about the so-called new math. A lot of the issue with the new math is that it's very conceptual. And a lot of parents will make the complaint, well, why can't they just do this? Why can't they just do that?
Yeah.
Because that's how we learned it 30 years ago. We just here's the algorithm, plug the number in, and get the answer. But a lot of us we didn't understand what we were doing. We just knew the formula. It was like a cheat code, and we would
Okay.
get the answer. But the higher level math, like the pre-calculus, I would say starting with like pre-calculus, calculus. I mean, geometry and algebra has its share of it, but pre-cal and calculus are very conceptual. Like it's like you really won't. I don't know. Some people might debate me about this, but I would say you really won't survive if all you're trying to do is memorize algorithms in calculus. And it is a lot of algorithms in calculus. Like there's like derivative formulas and
Yeah.
all these different types of things, but you got to really know the concept because sometimes the way they'll ask you questions that are general in a calculus class, you can't just say, okay, well, what's the formula for this? Because it might be a formula for it, but first you got to figure out, okay, well, how do I do the problem first? And
Okay.
then because then you got to know which formula to use. And that's another issue with statistics. Statistics is like that. It's very conceptual. Once you get into the formulas and like, standard deviation, percentile rankings, all that kind of stuff, that stuff's not difficult. The difficult part is understanding the concept because the
Okay.
concept will tell you and inform you in terms of what formula do I need to use. But a lot of us, we don't learn math in a conceptual way. We learn it in a, okay, just like a I call it like a wham bam thank you ma'am type of way. And that don't work
Yeah.
for everybody. It's
No,
kind of it's
no,
kind of
no.
like, yeah, it's kind of like when you meet a young lady and you got one thing on your mind, but she ain't that type of girl.
Facts.
And then you come at her that way, and then she shut that shit down. Like, nah, we're not about to do that.
That's
I
right.
ain't the one.
I'm a flower.
I ain't one of them. And she
That's
lets you
right.
know. And then it's like, so with math, it's like, with some levels of math, you need a conceptual understanding. You got to really get to know it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
take your time with it.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
that's like that. And that's just the analogy just now is like you needed to take the time to get to know her in order to really be able to spend some time. And maybe y'all would have got into that, but you got to get to know her first. Like, damn,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I ain't. So
Yeah.
that's like, a lot of the conceptual understanding is important.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's what's lacking. And so like the so-called new math or the common core math is meant to, from an early age in the math curriculum, develop that conceptual understanding. So it's not just strictly, all right, we teaching you how to add, 3-digit numbers, add each column and then carry the one. Well, what does that
Okay.
one even mean? What does that one represent?
Yeah.
And why we
Yeah.
got to carry the one?
I
A
got you.
lot of kids
I
would be like I don't know why we just do it. Like, why you do it? Why you do that? And that's becoming even more important now. Being able to explain yourself when you're solving a math problem, because nowadays it's Chat GPT. It's all these different apps that are just, you take a picture of the problem and they give you the answer. It even give you the steps, but you can't. So now in an educational setting, you need to be able to explain why that's your answer and why that answer makes sense, because you could have got the answer from anywhere. So when
yeah.
answers the answer has become less valuable because the computer will give you the answer. Google will give you the answer to anything. Photo math will give you the answer to any math problem. So
Yeah.
now what you gonna do? Now you gotta not only, you gotta prove that you know how to do it, and you
Gotcha.
gotta be able to talk about it. You gotta be able to talk about what you did. And even if you get a wrong answer, that's still a wrong answer is still a way um to show understanding. Because if you recognize your answer's wrong, all right, tell me why I was wrong and tell me what you should have did.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing. But a lot of people, if they want to rely on, like I said, like we talked about in the beginning, if they just want to rely on the computers and rely on
Calculators.
Google, yeah, rely on
Yeah.
the calculators, that's going to give
Yeah.
them the answer, and they don't even understand why that's the answer, they're not going to make it. They're
No.
not going to make it because it's really going to be like two classes. It's going to be two classes of people. It's going to be the people that really know how to do the work, and it's going to be the people that have to rely on the calculator. Like you ever heard of I think about Waldorf schools all the time when I have these conversations. You ever heard of Waldorf schools?
Nah. Uh-uh.
So the Waldorf schools, I first heard about them maybe like almost 15 years ago. It was a either New York Times or Wall Street Journal article about them. They're these private schools that are set up around the country.
Okay.
There's probably one somewhere down in your area. There's one here in Philly,
Yeah.
and they got them in different places. The newspaper article was talking about one that was in Silicon Valley. Now the
Okay.
thing about no, this is highfalutin, 40, $50,000 a year private school, one of them, right? CEOs and vice presidents of corporations send their kids there because they don't want their kids with the general population and all that. Um, but so the one in Silicon Valley, the newspaper article was saying like, the CEO, the hot, administrative people that work for Hewlett Packard, Google, Yahoo, all these companies, they send their children in. Now, the thing that's interesting about the Waldorf schools is that they're low tech. They don't have no smart boards. They don't use smartphones. They don't use iPads, no tablets. It's just old school. Like we got paper, we got pencils and pens, and we just, we this is how we learn. So
Dang.
when you think about, so when I read that, I was like, but the CEOs of the people of the companies, the administrators and the managers of the companies that are creating the technology, that are selling it to the rest of us, they send their children to the place where they're not using technology.
Oh yeah, just like the owner and CEO of TikTok don't let his kids watch it. Don't let his kids have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
So
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
yeah.
But hold on, don't give him no more. Don't give him no more. Let's save it for part four. Save it for part four. Uh, because well we'll talk off camera because I want to do something different with you next one. But okay, so let's stop right here because giving them too much.
All right.
Let them yeah, let them know where you can get. Let
Get
them
your
know.
copy. Yeah, get your copy of How to Use All This Math Volume 1, which is an excellent resource book for parents, grandparents, uncles, aunties, teachers, community members, anybody that cares about the youth and wants the youth to excel mathematically. Because what we got to start doing is we can't rely solely on the schools. We can't do that. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. Even if your child is the best math teacher, they can't still be responsible for being the only person helping your child to learn math. Your children have to be ready for math class. They got to
Yeah,
have some prerequisite skills. They got to bring some things to the table. So in the book, what I do is I show parents or adults how to take everyday activities and use them as teachable moments and miniature lessons in arithmetic, lessons in algebra, some lessons in geometry, so it doesn't like necessarily disrupt your lifestyle as it is, and there's some black history in there too. I incorporate the histomatics teaching framework, so there's some black
systematics.
history learned in there as well.
I
you
love
know
it. I love the
um
systematics.
yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, but I also, and you can catch me on YouTube. There's a reel. I made an Instagram reel. I didn't post it yet, but I was just thinking, in terms of just motivating people just to, follow my content.
Yeah,
It's I think one thing that people can take into consideration is this. Like I'm a math teacher and I'm a math professor, but first and foremost, I'm a father. I'm a black man and I'm a father. I'm a father of three. And my children are pretty sharp at math. So if you want to learn, if you're a parent yourself and you want to learn how your children can be sharp at math, it would make sense to, ask questions of a person that has done it. Ask a math teacher, because
there
you
you go.
always think about because you got to think about what happens when you meet a child who's the child of a math teacher, right? The first thing that comes to our mind is, damn, you probably real good at math. And a lot of time, and I think for the most part, mostly that's true, right?
Yeah,
I know my children are solid. They solid in
yeah,
math, because of
yeah,
things I've done. So what I do on the YouTube channel is I'm trying to share the game with everybody else. I'm letting you know, like, look, you can, you try this and try that, and do this and do that, so your children can, because a lot of parents just don't really know what to do,
right.
But if I'm a math teacher and I'm telling you, like, all right, this is what I did with my son when he was 5. This is what I did with my daughter when she was 8. This is what I do with Asada now. What I'm saying? Because and a lot of that, like when we be in the car doing the Instagram reels, or we, be on YouTube making the videos, those are things that I'm really teaching her, and I'm just
Gotcha.
sharing it with y'all, with everybody else. So, as a
Gotcha.
way, I want to motivate people to, subscribe to the YouTube channel, watch the videos, watch the YouTube videos, share the videos.
Yes.
Watch us on social media, You know, so because these are the things. These are so in the education field we call them best practices. So I would call them best practices. Since
Yeah.
I got 3 children that are solid in math, you know,
Yeah.
and that's not that's they weren't born like that. You know,
Right.
I think I think all black children are born geniuses. I think the society dumbs us down,
There you go.
but our
There
job
you
is to
go.
try to prevent that. So I've been fortunate to be able to prevent the dumbing down of my children throughout their growth and development thus far, and I want to share those things with the community. So, and
Got you.
that's why I'm on YouTube, um, giving out the game basically
On
on
and on
YouTube, on social media,
Instagram. Yeah.
Instagram. I will be on TikTok. I keep procrastinating. I gotta jump on TikTok.
Don't waste your time.
Um,
Don't waste your time.
start,
It already got
start
passed. It's gonna
posting.
be banned.
It's gonna be
It al-
banned.
yeah, they already passed it. TikTok will be banned. I think by either the end of December or the beginning of next year. They already
Mm,
passed it to ban it. So yeah, don't even
I
waste your
missed
time with that.
I missed the wave.
Yeah,
So I
I did
so I
too.
guess that
I dibbled and dabbled in it a couple times, and I caught heat. I was getting hot on TikTok, but when it comes to us and actually talking about things that matter, like they were very strict. Like I would keep getting suspended on mine, like I was on YouTube, like on here. I kept getting suspended for like talking about stuff that's going on in the gun club, stuff that with the black farm ranchers, just different stuff like that. It would get hot, then they shut it down. So I stopped fooling with them because that's like I learned that TikTok they wanted to promote more of the bullshit. You know what I'm saying? The negative
yeah
stuff. So when it came to stuff that was conducive, they were harder on it. They would find ways to strike it and take it down. So I just stopped fooling with them. Yeah.
yeah
But yeah, man. So like I said, man, till next time, yo, man. I appreciate you, man. Like I said, we gonna this part 4. I'm just stay tuned, just stay on after we end this show. Um, but everybody, man, I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and please, 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 please learn the importance of math. Spread the importance of math. Encourage. Because, like I said, math is very, very important, man. And until next time, we shall see y'all. Peace.
peace.
The forgotten part.
My fellow citizens,
It is strong.
It's my duty to report
The true problems of our nation.
Vigorously developed, this resource will be of great benefit.
where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause.
I will be eternally grateful for your support.